Ever notice how life becomes a wrestling match the second you decide you need something to happen? You wake up stressed about that deadline, desperate for that text back, or frantically trying to force a conversation that clearly doesn't want to exist. Meanwhile, life is sitting there like a stubborn cat, completely ignoring your attempts to make it cooperate. But here's the thing, most people never figure out the harder you grip, the more everything slips through your fingers. It's like trying to hold water in your hands while squeezing as tight as possible. The pressure you think is helping is actually destroying what you're trying to protect. Think about it. When was the last time forcing something actually worked out the way you wanted? That job you desperately needed and stressed over for weeks probably went to someone who walked in relaxed and confident. That relationship you tried to save by clinging tighter probably ended faster because of it. The creative project you forced yourself to finish probably turned out mediocre compared to the one that flowed naturally. There's a reason why the most successful people seem to move through life with this weird, effortless energy. They're not constantly battling reality, trying to bend every situation to their will. They've figured out something the rest of us are still learning the hard way. Life responds better to flow than force. Let's break this down because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Most people approach life like they're trying to thread a needle while riding a roller coaster. Everything feels urgent, everything needs to be controlled, and they wonder why nothing ever feels easy. But what if the problem isn't that life is difficult? What if the problem is that you're making it difficult? Picture someone learning to ride a bike, the ones who tense up, grip the handlebars like their life depends on it, and try to control every wobble. They're the ones who keep falling over. But the moment they relax, trust the process, and let the bike do what it's designed to do, suddenly they're cruising down the street like they've been doing it forever. That's exactly how life works. The more you try to micromanage every outcome, the more chaotic everything becomes. The more you stress about what might go wrong, the more likely things are to actually go wrong. It's like you're creating resistance where none needs to exist. Now here's where this gets interesting. You ever notice how some people seem to have incredible luck? Opportunities just fall into their lap, they meet the right people at the right time, everything seems to work out for them. Most people assume it's genetics or connections or some secret they're not in on, but it's simpler than that. These people have mastered the art of not forcing things. They take action, sure, but they don't attach their entire identity to every single outcome. They don't make every situation life or death. They show up, do their best, and then let life meet them halfway. There's a psychological reason this works. When you're desperate, when you're forcing, when you're gripping too tight, you're operating from a place of fear and scarcity. That energy is palpable. People can sense it, opportunities can sense it, even your own creativity can sense it. And none of them want to be around that kind of pressure. But when you approach life with a relaxed confidence, when you trust that things tend to work out, when you stop making everything about you and your need to control the universe, that's when doors start opening that you didn't even know existed. Let me give you a real example. Ever try to remember something that was right on the tip of your tongue? The harder you think about it, the further away it gets. But the second you stop trying, the moment you let go and move on to something else, boom, it pops right back into your head. Your brain works better when it's not under pressure, and so does life. This applies to everything. Money flows easier when you're not desperate for it. Relationships develop naturally when you're not forcing them. Creative ideas come when you're relaxed, not when you're stressing about deadlines. Even physical skills improve faster when you're not overthinking every movement. The people who figure this out early, they're the ones who seem to glide through challenges that break everyone else. They're not superhuman, they just understand that life has its own rhythm, and fighting against that rhythm is exhausting and ineffective. But here's what's crazy about this whole thing. Society teaches us the exact opposite. We're told that if we're not stressing, we're not trying hard enough. If we're not controlling every variable, we're being irresponsible. If we're not forcing outcomes, we're lazy. But what if all of that is backwards? What if the most productive thing you could do is stop trying so hard? What if the most responsible thing you could do is trust that you've done your part and let the rest unfold naturally? What if the hardest working people are actually the ones who know when to step back and let things breathe? This isn't about giving up or being passive. This is about understanding the difference between productive action and counterproductive force. Productive action comes from a place of clarity and confidence. You see what needs to be done, you do it, and then you trust the process. Counterproductive force comes from anxiety and desperation. You're so worried about the outcome that you sabotage your own efforts. Think about a musician playing a difficult piece. If they tense up and try to force every note, it sounds terrible. But if they relax, trust their training, and let the music flow through them, magic happens. The same notes, the same hands, but completely different results because of the energy behind the action. Your life works the same way. The same actions, the same goals. But when you stop forcing and start flowing, everything changes. Conversations become easier. Opportunities appear more frequently. Problems solve themselves faster. It's not that the external world suddenly becomes perfect. It's that you stop creating unnecessary resistance. Here's something most people don't realize about resistance. Every time you force something, you're essentially telling the universe that you don't trust it to work out. You're saying that if you don't control every detail, everything will fall apart. But that lack of trust creates exactly the kind of energy that makes things fall apart. When you force a conversation, people feel pressured and want to escape. When you force a business deal, people sense desperation and lose confidence in you. When you force creativity, you end up with work that feels stiff and unnatural. The forcing itself becomes the problem. But when you approach the same situations with trust and ease, people want to engage with you. They feel comfortable around your energy. They're drawn to the confidence that says, I'm here, I'm doing my part, and whatever happens next is fine with me. This doesn't mean you don't care about outcomes. It means you care about them without being attached to them. You want things to work out, but you're not desperate for them to work out. You take action without being paralyzed by the need to control results. And here's the beautiful irony: when you stop needing everything to go your way, things start going your way more often. When you stop gripping so tightly to your plans, better opportunities show up that you never could have planned for. When you stop forcing life to fit your timeline, you discover that life's timeline often works out better than yours would have. The most successful people in any field understand this paradox. They work hard, but they don't force outcomes. They care deeply, but they don't attach their worth to results. They take action, but they don't micromanage every step of the process. They've learned that life responds better to trust than to control. So maybe the question isn't, how do I make this work? Maybe the question is, how do I stop getting in my own way? Because once you learn to work with life instead of against it, everything becomes easier. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you stop making it harder than it needs to be. Here's where this gets deeper. See, forcing life isn't just about personal habits or career moves. It shows up in the way most people approach every single day. They wake up already stressed about outcomes they can't control, trying to micromanage conversations that haven't even happened yet, planning responses to problems that don't exist. But think about the people you know who seem to have this natural magnetism. They're not the ones frantically networking at every event or desperately trying to prove their worth. They're the ones who show up authentically, contribute value without agenda, and somehow opportunities just gravitate toward them. That's not coincidence. That's what happens when you stop broadcasting desperation and start operating from genuine confidence. The real shift happens when you understand that life responds to energy, not effort. Desperate energy repels everything you want. Calm, purposeful energy attracts it. You've probably experienced this without realizing it. Those times when you stopped caring about impressing someone and suddenly they became interested. When you quit obsessing over a goal and it materialized effortlessly. When you relaxed into a situation and everything clicked. Most people miss this because they're addicted to the struggle. They think suffering equals progress. They wear stress like a badge of honor, believing that if they're not constantly fighting for something, they're not trying hard enough. But that's exactly backwards. The most successful people understand that ease is not laziness. Flow is not passivity. There's a massive difference between giving up and letting go. Letting go means you still take action, but from a place of clarity rather than panic. You still have goals, but you're not attached to them playing out exactly as you envision. You still care about outcomes, but you don't let them dictate your internal state. This is what separates people who burn out from people who build lasting success. Here's what nobody tells you about forcing versus flowing. When you force, you create resistance, not just in yourself, but in everyone around you. People can sense when you need something from them. They can feel your agenda before you even speak, and that energy makes them want to pull away. But when you approach life from a place of abundance, when you genuinely don't need anything from anyone, that's when people want to give you everything. The paradox goes even deeper. The less you need validation, the more respect you get. The less you chase money, the more opportunities appear. The less you try to control relationships, the deeper they become. It's like the universe is constantly testing whether you trust the process or whether you're still trying to manipulate outcomes. And here's the part that will change how you see everything. Most of what you think you need to force isn't even necessary. Half the things you stress about will resolve themselves if you give them space. Half the conversations you dread will never happen. Half the problems you lose sleep over will become irrelevant in a month. You're spending massive amounts of energy solving problems that don't exist and creating obstacles that were never there. The people who master life understand this. They've learned to distinguish between what requires action and what requires patience. They know when to push and when to pause. They've developed an intuitive sense for the rhythm of things. And once you tap into that rhythm, everything becomes easier. Not because life gets simpler, but because you stop fighting the current and start moving with it. This isn't about becoming passive or giving up on your dreams. It's about recognizing that the best results come when you combine clear intention with relaxed execution. When you know what you want, but you're not desperate for it. When you work toward your goals, but you're not destroyed if they don't happen exactly as planned. That's the secret successful people know, but rarely talk about. They've learned to hold their desires lightly. They care deeply about their work, but they're not emotionally dependent on specific outcomes. They understand that the moment you need something too badly, you lose the very qualities that would help you get it. So the next time you catch yourself forcing, gripping, or trying too hard, remember this: the things that are truly meant for you won't require you to abandon yourself to get them. The right opportunities will feel natural. The right relationships will flow easily. The right path will reveal itself when you stop being so desperate to find it.